Since the dawn of time, humanity has contemplated the future. It is only natural to question why we are all present and what it all signifies. People have the chance to reflect on their place in the world when they look to the future and consider what might come. In addition, there is no turning back, right? The only route available without time travel is forward. As a result, both men and women have spent a lot of time making predictions about the future. But the game of prediction is a harsh one. Yes, a lot of academics have thought about the implications of new technologies. As you'll see below, there are significant roles for robots and space exploration. But a lot of earlier guesses were amazingly off. Consider the long-held notion that humans would one day inhabit the oceans and ride enormous seahorses. There's a phrase that says you can't win 'em all. However, in these 10 cases, those who predicted the future were astonishingly accurate in their predictions. These ancient prophecies turned out to be incredibly wise, despite the fact that they might not have understood the precise context of our present world. Number 10. Spaceflight travel. How sci-fi inspired space travel for millennia. Alex McDonald. It shouldn't come as a surprise that people have prophesied spaceflight in the past. Scientists and philosophers have contemplated traveling to other dimensions for ages. The moon and stars have always been the focus of future hopes since they have always been visible, even before the invention of the telescope. English philosopher Joseph Glanville predicted that getting to the moon would one day be as simple as sailing to the United States in 1661. Of course, crossing the Atlantic back then was far more challenging. So perhaps his moon comparison isn't too off the mark. Jules Verne advanced it with From the Earth to the Moon 2 centuries later. Verne's idea on spaceflight proven to be quite similar to how launches and moon landings are actually carried out in the present period. Despite the fact that it was written in 1865, Verne's beliefs were also expanded upon other thinkers in the early 20th century. In the 1920s, one artist painted flying taxis with propellers that were used for space travel. To them, the idea of making a brief trip to the moon seemed as simple as calling a taxi for a ride across town. Of course, getting to space today isn't quite that simple. But it's also not too far away. The wealthiest among us can now purchase tickets to travel outside of our atmosphere. Therefore, it may be said that earlier forecasts about the development of space taxis were accurate. Number 9. Machine-Man robots. Vernacular Mysteries, Robot by Jessica Orek and Rachel Teal. For ages, philosophers have debated the nature of artificial intelligence. Of course, those theories did not always include the computing technology we use today. But long ago, people pondered how life would alter as a result of automation. Rossum's Universal Robots was written by Czech author Karel Apek in 1921. The drama dealt with the mechanization of manual labor. He deliberately used the term robota, which is Czech for forced labor. The word has Slavic ancestry and originally meant slave. And its use spread swiftly. The term robot was created by English speakers to refer to any artificial labor substitute. Apek's worries about automation also applied to other philosophers. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, many thinkers expressed concern about automated labor. Robots are still changing factory jobs today all around the world. As predicted by Apek, such technological advancements have altered the nature of work. However, some robot predictions have been made in a more humorous manner. Robots were envisioned by French artists as helpful domestic assistants a little more than a century ago. One artist created illustrations of little robots cleaning the house automatically. Anyone who owns a Roomba is aware that the high-tech assistant can be a useful tool for automating undesirable housework. Number 8. Expeditious trains. Before automobiles were widely used, railroads were the primary form of transportation. Therefore, it seems to reason that those who make predictions will suggest them as the future. An American engineer by the name of John Elfreth Watkins made a number of predictions concerning the 21st century in 1900. High-speed rail development was one of them. Watkins predicted that locomotives would one day be capable of reaching 120 miles per hour, 193 kilometers per hour. To his credit, he wasn't entirely mistaken. Watkins actually undervalued the technology. In reality, Acela Express, a modern American train, can travel at 150 miles per hour, 240 kilometers per hour. In Japan, bullet trains may travel even more quickly, with some trains hitting 200 miles per hour, 320 kilometers per hour. Both in China and other countries, substantial high-speed train infrastructure has been put in place. Early in the 20th century, several engineers were considering the potential of high-speed rail traffic. Considering the future of high-speed trains was a key concern for luxury automaker Bugatti during the Great Depression, when auto sales were suffering. The business began making autorails, solitary train cars designed for lengthy journeys. These autorails hit 120 miles per hour, just as Watkins had predicted 30 years previously. However, as the Great Depression ended, the concept stalled. Cars quickly gained popularity again. Since then, they have ruled. The fact that modern governments are seriously considering one-lane, high-speed tunnel traffic, however, shows how far ahead of their time those old train plans were. 7. Digital journalism and citizen media. Watkins' forecasts for the 21st century extended beyond rail travel. He also thought about where photography was going. At the time, cameras were still a fairly new technology. It took a while for pictures to develop. Watkins, however, questioned whether the process couldn't move more quickly when looking out 100 years. He predicted the development of crystal clear photography in the 1900 analysis by stating that photographs will reproduce all of nature's colors. He continued, photographs will be telegraphed from any distance. Snapshots of its most stunning moments will be broadcast in the press an hour later if there is a conflict in China in 100 years. Of course, Watkins had no idea what the internet was like today. However, his forecasts regarding photo sharing are startlingly comparable to current digital media. Watkins' baffling assertion that images could be published 1 hour later was also accurate. Social media is available to everyone, enabling citizen journalists to report on events and distribute news right away. It is mirrored on screens all across the world in a matter of seconds. The current speed of information flow would astound Watkins. But his forecast turned out to be true. Recall how we mentioned Churchill's friend Fay Smith earlier. He didn't just nail the mark with the 1920s prediction about synthetic food. Smith foresaw the development of drone warfare in the future. Of course, Smith had recently survived World War I when he made his forecasts. In the course of the horrible conflict, tens of millions of people died. It makes reasonable that Smith would consider strategies for fighting a war with fewer troops. The politician described totally unmanned tank warfare that was controlled by soldiers, in a faraway control room far from the conflict in his futuristic essay. Smith suggested that tank pilots could also fly quite high and observe what was happening below. He stated that tank force commanders would be transported above their commands and would be able to oversee activities and direct them using wireless telephony. This will make battle more humanitarian, he claimed. Smith had no idea what drone warfare was like now. But what he's describing sounds strikingly like the unmanned aircraft that are employed in contemporary combat. Additionally, his hypothesis of tank commanders observing the conflict from above seems to parallel the modern practice of using powerful satellites and cameras to monitor conflicts across great distances. It may still be debatable whether war has become more compassionate. However, Smith's theory about the use of unmanned vehicles in combat was undeniably accurate. Number 2. BBT Make It 1953 Earbuds. Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury was heralded as a dystopian warning against censorship when it was published in 1953. Additionally, it provided filling science fiction entertainment. And as it turned out decades later, Bradbury's renowned work even foresaw some developments in technology. Guy Montag, the main character, is weary of his job as a fireman destroying literary works. Instead, he uses then unknown technology as he sets about conserving and increasing literacy. In one scene, Montag converses with the book's English professor, Faber, through a covert earphone. In fact, wireless technology hadn't even been invented yet. And no one in the early 1950s thought of having a component fitted into their ear. Bradbury, though, went all the way. In her ears the small seashells, the thimble radios tamped tight, and an electronic ocean of sound, of music and chat and music and talk coming in on the coast of her unsleeping consciousness. The author wrote in a later paragraph that provided more information about these covert earpieces. The concept of a seashell-shaped earphone at the time had to have originated from another world. But visionaries in Silicon Valley would turn that become a reality decades later. These thimble radios are typical today. And as Bradbury foresaw, the wearer of these earbuds actually receives endless music and talk. Number 1. Electric scooters for ride sharing. Between 1899 and 1910, French painters produced the L'An 2000 art series in an effort to predict what life would be like in the year 2000. Some of these visionaries foresaw things like the Roomba, as we've already explored. Others were eager to research new forms of transportation. And one particular artist, Jean-Marc Cotte, predicted ride-share e-bikes and scooters almost exactly. Cotte portrayed Parisians traveling the city on miniature vehicles in his artwork. To be fair, he would have preferred skates over scooters for the miniature rides. However, he wanted to show that people could move around with ease, so they were powerful and electrifying. In a sense, Cotte didn't have to wait long to see them